shift now down to Southern California to the Classical Academies. And Corey, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I will hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Gina. I'm a part of the Classical Academies. We're in North County, San Diego. We're an independent study charter school. We have 7 sites serving students from TK through 12th grade, and also have a few students certificate of completion bound, so staying with us till 22, so always learning and growing. Our motto is partnering with parents, so all the time, and especially through this time, really seeking out what our parents need and how we can best serve them. So there's so much during this time that's unknown, so much that's consistently changing, especially at the beginning, for all our team members. And there's so much uncertainty for our students, our families, and our team members. And so just acknowledging for the team and everyone that yes, this is a very hard time for everyone, and we all come with different needs and concerns. And through this, we must listen to our governor and the Department of Education. We are going to put our best foot forward. We're here for our students, and our families matter, as well as our own team and all the needs that they come with. So I am the Director of Special Education. I've been with the charter school Classical for 8 years, and I've been in special ed for about 25 years. So my focus mainly is with students with disabilities. So our main focus during this time was serving our students and how do we get our services and supports up and running. So there was a lot of directive about needing to write amendment meetings for all these students. So we have over 500 students with special needs, and I thought the team might lose their mind if we need to write amendment meetings for all these students. So we were willing to take the risk of shifting our focus to just focusing on how can we serve our students quickly and get things up and running. So for me, thinking about all these amendment meetings, there was so much unknown, and then there was directives about putting timelines of when you'd be back, and we have no idea. And then also the huge time commitment. So focusing our energy on distant learning. So we were willing to take that risk, and we decided to write a prior written notice to all our families, letting them know our intent and also what we were going to offer. So then we also knew that there are compliance things that we need to focus on. So at the same time, looking at prioritizing our IEPs. So we had lots of initials coming down the pipe, and knowing we can't do a full comprehensive evaluation. So what is that going to look like for our families? So we reached out individually to all those families that had initial IEPs coming up, and talking to them about, here's the situation. We're not going to be able to do comprehensive assessments. So how should we best move forward on this, and giving them options. And the majority of the families have decided to wait until we get back on our campuses so we can have a comprehensive evaluation. So with those families, we followed up with a prior written notice explaining what was happening, and then also that we'd be holding IEP meetings within the first 30 days to make sure we expedite those for those students, as well as continuing to support them even without an IEP. So, and then secondly, our triennials. So lots of triennials coming up for the end of the year. So again, reaching out to each of those families, talking about what it looks like for a review of records, and if we could get enough information needed to cover best supports for those students. So we through looking at how can we assess students, so not only for triennials but also for present levels, as well as progress on goals, looking at how can we assess students while they're not on campus? What can we be providing? So our lead school psychologist, she reached out to publishers, finding out what online assessments are available, and not much at this time. We had already been using some web-based rating scales, so tapping into those, and also there are some more available that we reached out and got. We also talked with other non-public agencies and other school psychologists to just brainstorm and figure out how are we going to support these students and have solid assessments. We worked as a team, each department. We have a Google Drive where we're uploading any assessments we have. Our special ed teachers are working on creating PowerPoints to create informal assessments that we can do via Google Hangout or Zoom or whatever platform. So whether it's shapes or reading comprehension passages, fluency, math, so just where we can all share resources rather than each team member kind of trying to figure it out on their own. We also created a template for review of records, so everyone can be utilizing that. And then looking at each team member comes with a different base knowledge of being comfortable with virtual learning. So some are very uncomfortable with it, whether age or different things, or some lack the confidence and they have a lot more ability than they just need encouragement. And then also some just lack knowledge and need training, as well as maybe partnering with someone else. So there's things we already had in place, like parent-teacher input via Google surveys, but not everyone was utilizing that. So just again, collaborating and helping everyone with the resources we already have, and then not reinventing too many wheels and all supporting each other. Then next, updating IEPs. So I said we chose not to write all these amendments at once, but looking at updating the IEPs as they come up and writing it in the comments that during this distant virtual learning services will be provided via whatever individuals we are providing for those students. But then there are a group of students who have a lot more supports that we are holding IEP meetings much quicker. So those students with behavior intervention services and intensive individualized services, reaching out to those families and discussing what's needed during this time. So some of our students, are great. Parents are heavily involved and don't necessarily need a lot of support because we are a hybrid program where none of our students are at our schools 5 days a week. So the most our high schoolers are at our school 4 days a week. So anyways, determining if there needs to be a check-in weekly, or some of our students need a check-in in the morning and afternoon. So just really individualizing those IEPs for those students. And then, so services, this is the meat and potatoes, and I just really was pushing the team and encouraging the team. We want to put our best foot forward for these kids. They need us, they need to connect with you as their teacher. So we met as different departments and different specialists. So all the speech pathologists got together and were amazing and created videos. So split up kind of goal areas. So like, for instance, R, articulation. So one of the speech pathologists is creating videos about R, and then pushing those out to families. So knowing the needs that families have, all different things going on right now. Some are still trying to work with their kids at home. They have various ages and grades. It's been talked about different, maybe we have one computer and multiple kids and all these things happening. So for a lot of our families, having a video sent for them to use during that week. So they might not be able to log in at 11 for their speech service on a Wednesday, but they can do it 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. So the speech pathologist created these videos and they're all uploaded to our Google Drive so they can all share them. And then there's data points for them to collect during that video. So then the main thing we were hoping is for students to video themselves and then send it back with whatever we're asking, or they can audio or an email, and then the speech pathologist can look at that and give feedback. So it's been very successful. It's been fun to get feedback. So same thing with each department, looking at how we can support these kids. So I could go into more detail, but I know we don't have a lot of time. So it's been fascinating and exciting to meet with like the vision specialist and orientation and mobility specialist, and talking about how does this even work? I've been doing this, for 20, 30 years, and it doesn't even make sense to my brain on how to teach kids orientation and mobility during this time. And I just keep with excitement sharing, this is exciting times in that we're learning and growing in ways that we never imagined we could, and supporting kids in a whole different way. So our SAI assistants, that's what we call our special ed teachers, our specialized academic instructors. So our paraprofessionals are logging on with some of our Google Hangouts to support students. Also doing co-treatment, which we were doing before. So maybe a speech and OT log on and have direct support for a student. So again, very individualized. We are doing direct, where we are sending videos depending on what's best for the family. So lastly, just thinking, I know this is really crazy and challenging times, but it's also very exciting times, in my opinion. We get to grow and learn. We get to learn better strategies. Some of our kids, as with social emotional needs continue to rise, kids that have a hard time getting out of the house, like we're coming to them, like they can't escape. They open your computer, we're here for you. Or families that, are hard to get to IEP meetings, we're coming to you, open your computer, we're here, So I think in a lot of ways, there's going to be, great things that come out of this that we can continue to grow and develop in this great work we do every day. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. A couple comments and questions that came up during your presentation. If you could also share your template for the record reviews, that would be great. And then I appreciate how you talked about service tracking, and that's something that we'll have more guidance come out about, and maybe just more examples as folks are managing service tracking in a variety of ways. Mm-hmm. So thank you. Yes. Thank you to our school leaders. It is nice to hear how you sort of acknowledge the struggle and the uncertainty that you have been faced with, and that you moved forward with intention and thinking about the students and the families first, and collaborating with them to ensure that they're getting services that they're entitled to. And so appreciate the way that you've all approached and shared. So let me now transition us to the third and final segment of our webinar. We're going to zoom back out and take a statewide lens, and I want to welcome David Tostin and Janice Kwan from the El Dorado County Office of Ed to give us some thoughts, maybe a joke or two, no pressure, and facilitate us in a Q&A. So welcome, David.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We'll certainly do our best. And so on behalf of Janice and I think we'd like to thank everyone for participating this morning, and we'd like to welcome you into our homes, which is something I didn't think we'd ever be doing. I just want to also thank CCSA and Gina for organizing the webinar today, Kristen and CDE for their leadership and the tone that they're setting as we're going through this crisis. And also Mary and Casey from Butte County, the Achieve Charter School, and Corey from Classical. As we were going through the last components, there were two things that really resonated with me that I wanted to emphasize. One is some of the lessons that were shared from Casey and Mary and the experience that they went through during the campfire. And I think it's important for all of us not to spend any more time celebrating our problem and admiring it, and really getting to the place of being active and doing what's best for kids, because the barriers and challenges will still exist. But as we're operating and doing our best for kids, we'll begin to feel some energy and momentum in getting into a better place. And then Corey also made the comment about taking risk at some point in their process. And I can't underscore that enough. Typically in special education, we are always afraid of the boogeyman or boogie woman. It's 2020. And so really operating from a place of what's in the best interest of students, recognizing that there will be accountability, as there always is. But I would much rather be held accountable knowing that I was operating in the best interest of children, rather being held accountable to how well I managed my risk and compliance during this time. And so as we're looking for answers during this unprecedented, meaning first time event, if we center in on our true north around what's best for our students and our staff and our families, I think we can hold our heads proudly on the other end of this with the new lessons that we've learned, as well as what we're able to accomplish. And so I want to encourage everyone, if you've not looked in the Q&A box, please check that box. There are a number of questions that have already been replied to by Janice and other panelists. I'd also like to take a moment and introduce Janice Kwan, who's the director of our charter SELPA and has been key in organizing our response and providing support to our partners. In the chat box, I'm sharing a link to our website that has all the resources that we've developed regarding special ed and COVID-19, as well as links to other organizations that have resources available. As you are perusing any of the content that our team has developed, I think it's important that we highlight that you need to consider your status as a charter school. If you are an LEA for special education, meaning you have the full responsibility for special education, and you are a member of a SELPA or have an agreement with a SELPA that treats you like an LEA, or if you are a school of the district. If you are a school of the district, we want to stress the importance of working with your authorizer because of the responsibilities related to special ed. If you are an LEA, then it is business per usual in terms of your responsibilities for special ed, and you should be working with your SELPA and local community around identifying resources and putting programs in place. So Janice, before we jump to the questions, anything you wanted to add as you've been working with schools over the past few weeks?
I just really appreciate the perspectives that both Achieve and Classical have shared today. I think the common theme that I know they are taking that approach, and we as a SELPA have been messaging, is really patience first and foremost with yourself and each other and your families, communication, consistency, and documentation. I think those three areas are really critical as you're looking to implement what do special education services and supports look like in your distance learning environment. And it was so nice to see the difference among the two schools. They're doing those same things, but in different ways in how they're approaching that. So I really appreciate the work that they're doing and how they're implementing those themes across. I know that I answered some of the questions, and please know that we are, as David shared, we're trying to answer all of your questions, knowing that you may be your own LEA, you may be with us. I see a lot of names on the list of participants that are in our SELPA, and I see some that aren't. So always want to caution you that we are happy and willing to share our resources and guidance, but please know that you should always connect with your local SELPA or authorizer if you're under your authorizer, as they should be the ones ideally implementing what FAPE looks like in the distance learning setting. Before I move on to some of the questions, I know Casey, you wanted to answer about your school doing the morning assembly. So if you want to chime in about what that looks like virtually.
I just sent it over there. It's just on our Achieve Charter School Facebook page at 8:30. Anybody's welcome to join us and log in. It's public.
Great. Thank you.
And one more, Mary, just a quick question someone had in the chat box. Are the breakout rooms in discourse monitored by the instructor? Or is it able to be monitored by the instructor?
When the students are in there with the instructor, he can monitor it, but it's a public platform. And so we have let our parents know that they also need to be on there. And many of our parents have gotten a login so that they can monitor their own students' usage.
And one more question for you, Mary. Are you guys a one-to-one device school? I think that was in the chat box.
Yeah.
As well.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Ashley, we see a question here about prior written notice. Should it be individual or school-wide? I would recommend individual because although we as a SELP, and I know others have provided kind of a template prior written notice, we've kind of been messaging choose your own journey, so to speak, because that's where you're going to document for the student what is changing in their offer of faith. And so if you do it school-wide, that may not be the case for every student. So you do want to individualize some of the language in there unique to the offer of faith for that student.
Yeah. And I think, Denise, would it be fair to say that if you choose the universal PWN, at some point you are still going to need to individualize for the students in your program? Yes,
I think that's the key. And I think both charters today did an excellent job of showcasing how they're doing that. Again, always what does faith look like in this distance learning setting? And it's going to be different. It's going to be different than the IEP that you currently have in place based on your regular instructional program. And that's okay. What is necessary for the student to make some progress and be provided the supports that they need. And that is definitely going to be different than what you're currently, in most cases, than what you've been providing for students. And I think Mary did a good job of showcasing some of her students and what that looks like in the change in placement and the offer of faith.
And just a quick example, I mean, if David had supports in his IEP around behavior, specifically related to recess or the lunchroom or passing periods. Obviously, if I'm now at home, those behavioral goals are not going to be appropriate. So we may need to provide support to parents around how to avoid power struggles. What are some options that can be provided for David when he does not want to do math or is having difficulty? And so supporting the parent in the home setting rather than just trying to, plug and play the previous interventions that we had in place. Also recognizing that there are going to be new relational dynamics at home with children and parents. And so going back to, okay, what keeps everyone safe, what makes sense, and what does the parent have the capacity to work with their student around their behavior.
There's a lot of great resources out there. I did share in the Q&A. CPI has just come out with some free online training specific to parents around de-escalation. And then also Captain, if you have parents with students with autism, parents are trying to see what does that look like in the home environment instructionally. Captain has a lot of great free resources as well. Those are just a few of many resources out there that are specific to parents, because as David said, that is different than what it would be in the regular instructional setting.
So Janice, one of the questions that you've received pretty frequently over the past couple of weeks is, what should these services look like in distance learning? Is there a rule of thumb or guidance that we can provide around developing services in the distance learning setting?
There's not a rule of thumb. Again, I think Corey and Mary did an excellent job of showing what does that look like, and it's really having those individual conversations and meetings with parents and service providers. What does that look like in their current setting? And I love how Corey, they're really, a lot of folks are stretching themselves in trying to grasp, okay, how do I take this concept that I've done on a school site with a student and worked with them one-on-one or in small group setting? How does that translate into a distance learning environment? Some of it may look the same, and some of it, of course, is going to be different. And even your level of services are going to be different. David and I earlier were talking about, okay, I have a kiddo that's been getting OT 3 times a week, 60 minutes at a time. Does that translate over? No, maybe, perhaps, but again, what does it look like given the structure in that home environment and access for that student? And what are their supports, what are they needed in that setting?
One of the resources that I saw that really stuck with me, one of the tips for parents was around, instead of having a power struggle around reading time or TV time, okay, son or daughter, you can watch TV, but you have to do it without sound and you have to read the captions. And so I think being creative around how we, achieve the desired results, whether it's reading, whether it's, OT strategies in terms of using my fingers, is that okay for video games? I think it's the communication with the support providers, and so that everyone understands the resources available to parents in home and the context that they're working in and what's appropriate.
Yeah. We've been getting a lot of questions around annuals and tries because, as you know, under IDA, those timelines have not been waived. So there's two kind of things occurring. There's IDEA and the timelines that still need to be met. And then, as Kristen shared, there is that flexibility on understanding that the complete annual or try may not be able to be accomplished. And so still holding those meetings. Corey talked about doing records review if that's relevant. Those are conversations you need to have. If there is a need for assessments, either documenting why there's a delay in those assessments and or working with whatever assessment tools and resources that you use, do they have virtual options that can easily be accomplished in the virtual setting? There are a lot of virtual assessments out there that you can still do and still accomplish the results that you need to be able to review the students' growth and identify areas of need for that offer of faith. And again, if not, then you want to document why and document the delay and of course through an IEP team decision on what that looks like. And then as you come back to your traditional school setting, hopefully soon, then you pick up in completing those assessments.
Correct, and that's what we have talked about with families. So we will do, if we determine a review of records and informal evaluation through, a virtual setting, we can get plenty of data. We agree to do that, and then if there's additional assessments we feel are really needed, we close out the meeting and we're planning on holding an amendment when we return to add any other assessments.
Ramona had a question. Can we start a resource list for virtual assessments? I know for us as a SELPA, that's on our list of things to do because we are recognizing more and more that that's a need. And you folks are busy trying to get your distance learning up and running. And so we are starting that as a SELPA. Again, anything that we do as a SELPA will be on our website and is open to the public. You are more than welcome to use and access.
So, Janice, a quick question around working with contractors, NPAs, NPSs, or providers in the interim. Do you have any guidance, or what have you seen, or strategies would you suggest?
First and foremost, we are encouraging folks to honor those contracts. You are, as a public agency still receiving public funds, and the expectation is that you uphold those contracts. Recognizing that those services may vary. Obviously, if you're adjusting services for students, they may decrease. And so working with your NPAs and on what does that look like, negotiating, you can do an amendment to the master contract to negotiate what do rates or services look like in the current setting. And then even I had a school down south that we were talking through. The school had several NPAs they were working with, and they were concerned about obviously fiscal solvency for them as well as the NPA. And so working on some of those negotiations, and what they had planned to do is to not only honor the current contract with adjustment to those services and fee structure, but also committing to continuing that relationship into the next fiscal year so that that NPA has some security around sustainability and business, so to speak. So that's kind of what we've been messaging to folks is work with your NPAs. A lot of NPAs are up and running and ready to support you and have a lot of great resources and ideas. So definitely continue that partnership.
Yeah, and I think it's important to stress that once we return to whatever our new normal will look like at the beginning of next school year, we're still going to need the full continuum of services in place. That includes all the NPAs and NPSs that we work with. If they're unable to remain solvent during this time, we are only shooting ourselves in the foot in terms of available providers in the long run. And so it's the hold harmless that has been provided to public education, I believe, comes with a caveat, do unto others as has been done unto us. And so as we're being held harmless, I think our initial approach is to hold harmless our partners and contractors who support us in working with students.
Yeah. Even I know the other question we've had is around paraprofessionals, recognizing that their work will look different. And I think both both schools today did an excellent job of sharing how they're utilizing their paras and still ensuring that they're employed and able to provide services and supports to students as well.
And I can share non-public schools, and we're reaching out to those that we have contracts with, and they're, you know, in the same boat and deal with some very challenging students and those students going back in the home, you know, so, you know, just sharing resources and supporting them. And then I also want to go shout out to El Dorado. Our paras had a training coming up at the end of this month, and you guys are providing it virtually for our paras. So there's, you know, it's neat to still be training our people, even though we're in this virtual distant learning.
Thank you. Yeah, we aren't dealing with the specific nuances you all are, but we have our own nuances we're dealing with, and how do we support all of you virtually as well. So thank you.
Janice, can I also add that next year when school comes back, having your full troops of your paras ready to go, because your kids are going to need more support than they did this last year. So you definitely want to hold on to them. And then yes, all of our paras are amazing because of the support and training they've received from El Dorado.
Great, thank you.
You know, I think I would just want to highlight Casey's last comment in terms of, I know we are all very focused on what we are needing to deal with in the moment. And I think it's important that we recognize August, September, October is coming as well. And we'll have a whole host of activities to restart school or to continue on trying to serve in challenging circumstances, whether it's the PG&E power outages up north or wildfire season. I think the past 2 years have shown us that there will always be something. And so from our perspective at the charter SELPA, we would encourage everyone to also have their eyes 6 months ahead as well, and start planning, okay, when we need to bring our students back, what are our responsibilities going to be in terms of assessment, reestablishing services and relationships. And so we use this time to plan for that time period as well, so that the emergency of the moment doesn't create other emergencies for us at the start of next school year. Lastly, and Janice, I'll give you an opportunity, if you have any closing comments. The other piece that we would want to emphasize is you're starting to see information around funding at a state level. And while there was lots of excitement around some of the promises related to special ed, we wanted to encourage everyone, while you're doing your budget development, that you keep abreast of the news from Sacramento and the shifting fiscal guidance, so that everyone is planning appropriately for next year. So Janice, last word from our side.
Keep up the great work. Great to see all of you virtually, and we will continue to help support and be a resource to you. And really just a shout out to Achieve and Classical. Amazing what you're doing and what you've been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. So thank you.
Nice. David and Janice, thank you so much for that information. Thanks for being willing to jump in and field questions as they come in. I know these are times where folks are eager for specificity, and we don't have a lot of specificity. And so thank you for just reiterating the way that schools are, reinforcing the way schools are thinking about approaching the work. Let me just say, as we're wrapping up, thank you to the panelists. You know, it does take a special skill to stay on a live camera for 90 minutes and be as articulate as all of you have been. So thank you for your time and your information and what you're willing to share out as you take care of both your own family and then the families that are all enrolled in your program. So thank you. And then for panelists, thank you for attendees, sorry. Thank you for staying with us. We are going to be sending out more information about resources. Like I said, the Q&A will continue to be updated. There's been many resources shared today that we'll make sure get into the website. El Dorado, thank you for sharing your resources. We'll make sure, if you're okay with it, putting those on our website as well. We take our quality of webinars seriously. So when this ends, there will be a quick 2-question survey. If everyone would not mind taking a moment and giving us feedback, we're always wanting to improve. And then you will be seeing more opportunities to either participate in webinars, be a guest blog poster, if that's the right vernacular, on special ed programs that are happening at your school. We want to make sure, again, that we're getting information out into the world. And with that, I will say thank you. Be safe, be well, and don't hesitate to reach out if CCSA can be of assistance in your work. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon.